The first warning came not from the sky, but from the ground. Earth's soil shook under the feet of soldiers stationed near the Ridgeway base. A strange vibration, deep and steady, rolled up their spines and into their helmets. At first, they thought it was an earthquake. But when the birds fell silent and the clouds above spun into unnatural shapes, they knew something else was happening. A ripple of energy burst from the air itself, cracking trees and metal like paper. The portal opened with a sound like tearing wind, and out marched warriors in shining armor unlike anything Earth had ever seen. They were tall, silent, and glowing slightly blue. Their weapons pulsed with living energy, and their leader wore a crown of light on her head. Earth's forces raised their weapons, but they were already too late. Commander Rain Carter, a decorated soldier, had seen many wars, but this one wasn't like anything before. These enemies didn't speak, they didn't scream or curse. They moved in perfect rhythm, clearing cities with precision. Rain ordered a retreat, but half his squad never made it past the crater that used to be downtown. He swore to learn who they were and why they came. Up in orbit, Earth's satellites were dying one by one. The alien fleet was enormous, dozens of silver ships hanging above the clouds, blocking sunlight like giants in the sky. No broadcast came from them, no demand, only silence and attacks. Nations tried to fight back, but missiles exploded harmlessly against their shields. What the world didn't know was that the invasion wasn't a war of hatred. It was a royal mission. A lost relic from their world had awakened, hidden inside Earth's crust. The Queen herself had crossed galaxies to retrieve it. Her name was Seralia, ruler of the House of Velari. And what she found on Earth made her heart falter for the first time in her long reign. Among the ruins of Sector 7, she saw him. A lone human soldier, standing firm against her soldiers. He was covered in ash, his armor cracked, but his eyes held no fear. She raised her hand to order his capture, but then he looked at her. Not with rage, not with panic. Just curiosity and something else. A calm challenge. For reasons she could not explain, Queen Seralia hesitated. Her command faltered mid-air. Her fingers curled slowly. The other warriors paused, confused. This had never happened before. She felt her chest tighten, not with danger, but with a strange warmth she couldn't name. Her heart, usually cold like her homeworld, began to beat faster. Rain didn't know she was royalty. He only knew she looked different, fierce, beautiful, untouchable. He thought this would be the end, but she didn't strike. She just stared at him. Her golden crown gleamed under the broken sky. His breath caught, and for the first time since the invasion started, everything slowed down. Seralia stepped down from her hovercraft, ignoring her guards' protests. Her long braids swayed as she walked through smoke and rubble toward him. Her armor shone like molten silver, yet she moved with quiet grace. Rain stood tall, ready for death or capture. But all she asked was one thing. "Why are you staring at me like that?" she said, her voice soft but firm. Her soldiers remained still, waiting for her next order. Rain didn't answer. He didn't know how. He just stared back, confused by the moment. The queen of an empire that conquered stars had just asked him a question no soldier expected to hear. Something ancient awakened in that moment. Not in machines, not in weapons, but in hearts. Seralia felt her hand tremble. She, who commanded fleets with a glance, now struggled to hold eye contact. It wasn't fear. It was something she hadn't felt since childhood training, something forbidden. Rain lowered his weapon slowly. She hadn't ordered his death. She hadn't touched him. Around them, the war paused in confusion. He saw not a monster, but a woman hiding something behind her regal strength. She looked powerful, yes, but also lonely. Seralia turned away quickly. Her face unreadable. She gave a short command in her language, and the soldiers pulled back. Rain was left standing in the center of the crater, untouched. Above, the flagship hovered silently. The Queen had seen enough for now, but deep in her chambers that night, Seralia couldn't stop thinking of him, his eyes, his calmness, his refusal to kneel. The way he looked at her, not like a goddess, not like a threat, but like someone real. She placed a hand on her chest and felt her pulse still racing. Rain Carter couldn't sleep that night. Not because of the bombings or the cold ground beneath him, but because of her. The alien queen with fire in her hair and metal on her skin had looked at him as if she saw more than just a soldier. No one else noticed the pause, but he did. In that small moment, she had shown something unexpected. He had faced death many times, but this was different. There was no blood, no threat, just a strange calm that followed him even now. His squad thought he was lucky. A queen had spared him, and that was rare. But Rain didn't feel lucky. He felt like something had started, and he wasn't sure how to stop it. Seralia stood in her private chamber aboard the Valari flagship, looking down at Earth through the glass floor. The planet was green, broken, loud, and wild. Nothing like her home, yet it pulled at her, the way oceans pull on the moons. And one face refused to leave her thoughts, his face. His stare. That stillness in his eyes. She was not weak. She had led wars, silenced rebellions, and taken empires. Her people obeyed her without question. But tonight, her thoughts were not with strategy, they were with him. A man without armor now, just memory. Why had she let him go? Why had she spoken to him like that? Even she didn't know. The Queen ordered her vessel to land again, not with weapons, but quietly. A silent descent, under the cover of storm clouds. Her guards followed, confused by the mission. She told no one her true reason. She just said she wanted to walk the ruins again, the place where she saw him. Where her heart first stirred without her command. Rain had returned to that same area. 2. He didn't know why. He told himself he was scouting, watching for another strike. But deep down, he knew what he hoped for. And when the sky dimmed and the wind shifted, he looked up and saw her again. Not on a throne. Not with fanfare. Just walking alone. He didn't move, neither did she. The distance between them was filled with silence. No words. Just a strange understanding neither could name. She stepped closer. This time, no army behind her. Only the faint glow of her armor and the sound of rain touching steel. "Why are you here?" Rain asked. His voice was calm, not afraid. Seralia looked at him, her eyes sharp but not cold. She took another step forward. Her braid was soaked, her face pale from the night air. She didn't answer his question. Instead, she asked her own. "Do all your men look at me like you do?" She said. Rain blinked, unsure if it was a challenge or a test. He shook his head once. "No," he replied. "I don't see a queen, I see a person." The answer hit her harder than she expected. A queen but also a person. Her breath caught again, but she kept walking. Behind her, her guards were growing restless. They didn't understand this. They followed power, not emotions. But their queen did not turn back. Rain looked down at her gloved hand. She wasn't carrying a weapon. Her fingers were bare, wet, and trembling just slightly. "Is that why you spared me?" he asked. "Because I didn't bow?" Seralia shook her head. "No," she said quietly. "Because when you looked at me, it didn't feel like war. It felt human." She stopped speaking, realizing she had said too much. But the words were already out. Rain didn't know what to say. He had never heard something like that from an enemy. But was she still an enemy now, or something else? His heart was beating faster, but not with fear. He stepped forward once, just enough to match her presence. Saralia looked up into his eyes. This close, she could see the scars on his jaw, the dirt under his collar, the breath he held back. No crown had ever made her feel powerful like this moment did. No victory ever made her heart race like now. She whispered softly, "I do not know what this is, but I cannot stop thinking about it." Her voice cracked just slightly, a whisper. Between her lips and the storm. Rain wanted to speak, but before he could, a distant blast lit up the sky. The war hadn't paused forever. And they both turned their heads at the sound. Saralia closed her eyes for a second. Duty called. Her empire would not wait for her feelings. But as she turned to leave, her hand brushed his shoulder. Just a moment. Just contact. Then she was gone again, stepping back into the mist with her guards at her side. Rain stood alone in the smoke, the imprint of her fingers still on his armor. He didn't know her next move, but he knew one thing clearly now. She wasn't just here for war. And neither was he anymore. The battlefield changed after that night. Earth's forces expected more attacks, but the alien fleets moved slower, less aggressively. Recon reports showed strange patterns. Instead of wiping cities clean, they were scanning and then pulling back. It confused the generals. But Rain had a quiet guess. He didn't tell command about the second meeting with the alien queen. That moment under the rain felt too real, too raw, to be reduced to a debriefing. He knew she had come for him. And when her fingers brushed his armor, she had made a choice. Not of war, but something else. Queen Saralia returned to her council, but her silence was louder than her voice. Her advisors noticed the shift. She gave shorter commands. Her eyes wandered longer. And once, she even dismissed a battle plan that would have caused thousands of human deaths. No one questioned her. But they noticed. In her private chamber, she stood before her mirror in full armor. Her crown sat untouched on the table. She looked at herself and did not see a queen. She saw a woman unsure of what was rising in her chest. She whispered his name without meaning to. Rain. The sound felt strange on her tongue. The relic they sought had still not been found. That was the official reason they remained in Earth's orbit. But she knew the truth. She hadn't ordered the retreat because of strategy. She ordered it because she needed time. Time to understand what had happened between her and the human. Rain went back to the ruins again. He told himself it was part of patrol duty. But his heart betrayed him every time. He waited. Every sound in the distance raised hope. Every shadow made him turn. When she finally appeared again, it was like the storm had returned. She didn't speak right away. Neither did he. They stood in silence between the broken stones. A queen of stars and a man of dirt. She looked tired, but not weak. Her armor had scratches now. Her eyes were less guarded. He noticed all of it without looking away. Saralia stepped forward slowly. "Do you fear me yet?" she asked, voice soft. Rain shook his head. "No," he said. "I never did." She gave the smallest smile, just at the corner of her lips. It was the first one he had seen. It changed everything about her face. "I should not be here," she said. "My empire waits. My people are loyal. But I cannot stop coming to you." Her words were firm, but her voice trembled just slightly. She wasn't speaking as a ruler. She was speaking as someone trapped between duty and feeling. Rain walked closer. "Then stay," he said. "No war, no orders. Just stay for now." Her breath caught. The wind picked up. Around them, the city was silent. Not even birds flew here anymore. But in that stillness, something grew. Not anger. Not fear. Something alive. She reached out, and her fingers brushed his cheek. It was gentle, unsure. The touch of someone who had never done such a thing before. Rain didn't move. He let her feel the scar on his jaw, the warmth of his skin. She pulled her hand back slowly, her eyes wide. "You are not what I was taught humans are," she said. "You confuse me." Rain smiled faintly. "You confuse me too," he replied. She nodded once, a single motion, then looked away, as if afraid of what more might happen if she didn't. In orbit, her fleet waited. Officers whispered of her absences. Rumors began to form. Some said she was scouting relics. Others believed she was planning something more dangerous. Only her second-in-command, General Tyvran, had started to suspect the truth. He confronted her with questions, respectful, but sharp. She deflected at first. But when he pressed, she said only this: "Not everything that changes us is a weapon." That left him silent. But doubt had entered his mind, and doubt in the Velari court was dangerous. Rain returned to his base for resupply. He said little. His team noticed the change in him. He smiled more. He spoke less about the war. When asked why he walked alone into the ruins every week, he just said it helped him think. But one soldier saw through the lie. "Your meeting." "Someone," his friend Jace whispered. "A woman?" Rain didn't answer, but he didn't deny it either. That was enough for Jace to know the truth. He didn't tease. He just nodded, understanding something powerful was happening. Back in the field, Seralia returned again. This time without armor, she wore a cloak of deep silver and no crown. Her hair flowed freely, her face calm. Rain saw her from a distance and stood frozen. She had never looked more like herself than now. Rain didn't speak as Seralia approached. His heart beat louder with each step she took. He had seen her in armor, glowing with royal power, but now she looked softer. Not weaker, just different. Her presence still made his chest tighten, but not from fear. Her silver cloak moved like water in the wind. Her boots touched the broken ground as if she were gliding. Her face held no expression of command. Instead, it showed something quieter. Something only he had seen in her before. Vulnerability. "I needed to come," she said, standing in front of him. "Even if it breaks every rule I was raised to follow." Rain nodded, not needing to ask why. He understood. This was no longer about war or duty. It was about something they couldn't stop feeling. He motioned for her to sit near the collapsed wall. She sat without question, placing her hands on her knees. For a few moments, they just listened to the wind and the far-off humming of distant ships. Then Seralia spoke again, more quietly than before. "I was chosen to lead at birth. I was taught to suppress weakness, to see others as tools or threats. But now I sit with you, and I feel none of that. I feel peace." Rain looked at her. She wasn't performing. She was being honest. Raw honesty was rare from a queen. He reached into his pack and handed her a small metal flask. "It's just water," he said. "But clean. Took me hours to find." She accepted it carefully, as if it were something sacred. She took a sip, then handed it back. "Thank you," she said. Just two simple words, but they meant more than any speech. Back in orbit, General Tyvran was growing restless. The Queen's repeated visits to the surface had stretched thin his patience. The troops whispered more now. Not just doubts, but fear. Some believed she had fallen under a human trick. Others feared betrayal. Tyvran ordered a quiet scan. He sent drones cloaked in Velari shadow tech to track her movements. He watched her through silent eyes in the sky. What he saw shook his loyalty. She was not killing. She was sitting, smiling, sharing water with a human. That night, Seralia returned to her ship. She gave no orders. She walked directly to her chamber and locked the door. Her fingers touched her lips as she sat in the dark. She remembered the look in Rain's eyes, not of conquest, but of calm acceptance. She had spoken with him like no one else. No council, no general, no prince of any distant world. She had shown him her doubts, her truths, and he had held them gently. That night, she dreamed not of battles but of standing with him beneath the earth sky. Rain stayed awake too. He sat against a burned-out tank, staring at the stars. Somewhere up there, she floated in her ship, the enemy to most. But not to him. His chest felt tight, but not from danger. From a strange hope that he could not name. The next morning, orders came down from Earth Command. A counterstrike was being planned. They had found a weak point in the alien fleet's western shield zone. Rain's squad was to join the operation. He didn't cheer. He felt cold inside. He knew an attack now could break everything. Not just the fragile peace growing between them, but the very thread pulling Seralia away from war. Still, he had no choice. Orders were orders. And war did not wait for feelings. Seralia received a message from Tevran that same hour. Cold words, sharp tone. He requested her return to the throne world immediately. He claimed her presence on Earth was unnecessary and damaging to morale. She read it twice, then placed the device down without answering. She stood in front of the window again, staring down at the green-blue planet, her fingers clenched. She could not protect both worlds. Not at once. But she could protect one. And she had already made her choice deep inside her heart. That evening, she sent a private signal. Not through military channels. Just a pulse of energy hidden in the old Earth satellite range. Rain's makeshift receiver caught it. A message. Without words, just coordinates. He read them, then looked toward the hills. He left camp without telling anyone. Packed light. Took only what he needed. His legs moved fast, but his mind moved faster. The war was building again. Time was breaking. But he would meet her one last time before everything exploded. Rain moved quickly through the ruins, stepping over broken beams and scorched stone. The sun was low, bleeding red into the clouds. He kept his eyes on the direction she had sent. His boots crushed dry leaves as he climbed the slope. The old signal tower stood half collapsed, but it still worked as a meeting point. When he reached the top, she was already there. Seralia stood with her cloak wrapped tight around her shoulders. The wind pulled her hair across her face. She turned when she heard his steps and her face lit up, not with power, but with quiet relief. "I thought you wouldn't come," she said. Rain walked closer and stopped just a few feet away. "I thought the same," he answered, "but I couldn't ignore this." She gave a small nod. The space between them felt like a shield keeping the world out. They sat near the base of the old tower, on a piece of collapsed metal. Seralia looked toward the horizon. "My general has called me home," she said. "They believe I've lost my mind, that I'm unfit to rule." Rain looked at her calmly. "Have you?" he asked. She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach. Her eyes, "I've changed," she said. "And they fear change." She turned to face him fully. "I fear it too. But not like before. This change, it feels right." Rain's heart pounded. He didn't need to speak. She could see the truth in his eyes. She pulled something from her belt, a small silver band shaped like a circle with ancient markings carved into it. "This is a choice," she said. "In my culture, it's given to one we bond with. Not for politics. Not for power. But for understanding." She held it out in her palm, trembling. Rain looked at the object, then at her face. "You're offering this to me?" he said. "Even if it makes your people turn against you?" She nodded. "Even if it breaks everything I've built? I would rather be true with you than rule with a lie in my chest." The wind howled between them like a voice from the sky. He didn't take the band at first. He reached for her hand instead, closing his fingers gently around hers. "Then I'll stand with you," he said. "No matter what happens next." Her eyes filled with something brighter than command, something warm, something real. At that moment, the signal tower sparked. A burst of red light blinked at the edge of the valley. A warning. They both stood up fast. Rain's earpiece buzzed. "Enemy movement west side. Incoming strike within minutes," said a panicked voice on the line. Rain's jaw tightened. Saralia activated her communicator. Typhon's face appeared in the air, cold and furious. "You have gone too far," he snapped. "This is betrayal." She didn't flinch. "I choose peace," she said. "Even if it means war with my own." Typhon's eyes narrowed. "Then so be it," he said before cutting the signal. Rain grabbed his rifle but looked at her. "This is your last chance to return to safety," he said. She shook her head. "I don't run from my truth. I'll fight beside you." They ran together down the slope as the first explosion shook the hills. The sky lit with fire. Soldiers from both sides were advancing. Drones hissed through the air. Earth units opened fire. Velari troopers dropped from the sky. But in the center of it all, Saralia and Rain moved as one. He covered her back, and she deflected blasts with her energy shield. It wasn't just battle. It was survival, and they were not fighting for nations. They were fighting for a moment, for a feeling, for something no war could command. When Rain was hit by a shock pulse, she screamed and caught him before he fell. He grunted, stunned but alive. "Still with me?" she asked. He nodded. "You're loud for a queen," he muttered. She laughed once, raw and real, before pulling him up. They moved again, side by side, pushing toward the ridge where the fleet's signal station was located. They needed to stop the coming wave. If Tivran succeeded, both Earth and Saralia's rule would fall into chaos. She opened her hand and activated a final command code, a pulse of blue light that froze her forces mid-air. Rain stared at the sky as ships halted mid-maneuver. Tivran's ship loomed in the distance. He was coming personally. His pride wounded, his mission clear. He would erase both of them if he had the chance. Saralia turned to Rain. "One more stand," she said. "Together." He nodded, standing tall beside her. The sky turned black with approaching ships. Tivran's warcruiser cut through the clouds like a blade. Energy shields sparked as it descended. Troops lined the edges, weapons ready. His voice echoed across frequencies on both sides. "The Queen has fallen. Her will is broken. Surrender her or be destroyed." Rain gripped his weapon tighter. Saralia stood calm beside him, her eyes locked on the enemy ship. She didn't flinch. Her cloak fluttered like a flag. "He thinks fear will bend me," she said. "But I am not afraid, not anymore." Her voice carried through the wind like steel. Earth soldiers hesitated. They saw her standing with a human, not commanding fleets, but defending something invisible. Velari soldiers froze too. Confusion spread among their lines. This was not how queens fought. This was how rebels stood. This was how legends began. "Rain, step forward. We're outnumbered," he said. "If we hold the ridge, we buy time. If we fall here, they'll erase everything we built." Saralia nodded slowly. "Then we won't fall," she said. "We'll show them what truth looks like. Even if it ends here." Tivran landed with a blast of wind and metal. His armor was twice the size of any soldier's, glowing red with rage. He walked alone through his troops, each step shaking the ground. His eyes locked onto Saralia. "You disappoint our ancestors," he spat. "You disgrace the crown." Saralia removed her cloak and dropped it at her feet. She stepped forward without shield or weapon. "You speak of ancestors," she said, "but they never knew him. They never saw what I see. I am not disgraced. I am awake." Rain stood behind her, silent, unshaken. Typhon raised his blade. "Then, die for your weakness." Before he could swing, Seralia lifted her hand. A pulse of energy burst from her palm, not a weapon, but a command. Her soldiers' helmets blinked blue. A signal to stop. A royal override. Every Velari soldier froze in place. "I am still your queen," she said firmly. "And I say this fight ends now." Typhon roared in fury, charging forward, but Rain was faster. He lunged in with a tackle that drove the general off balance. The two men clashed, fists and steel echoing across the field. Seralia didn't look away. She watched the human fight the strongest warrior of her kind. Rain was smaller, but his movements were sharp, quick, focused. When Typhon knocked him down, Rain used the fall to roll and sweep his legs. Dust and sparks filled the air. Typhon stood again, angrier now. "You think you can defeat me with heart?" he growled. Rain wiped blood from his lip. "No," he said. "But I can delay you long enough for her to choose." Typhon turned. Too late. Seralia was already walking forward, hands glowing with blue fire. She reached Rain's side and looked Typhon in the eyes. "You are no longer my general," she said. "You are a relic, and I will not let you write my future." With a wave of her hand, she unleashed a controlled surge of energy that struck Typhon's armor and shut it down completely. The massive warrior fell to his knees, stunned and blinking. The silence was louder than any explosion. Around them, both armies stood frozen. No one knew what came next. Then Seralia turned to all of them, lifted her voice, and spoke. "This war ends. Not with destruction, not with domination, but with choice. I choose peace. I choose him." She pointed to Rain, whose chest rose and fell with exhaustion. "I choose to feel. I choose to be more than what they programmed into me." No one moved at first. But then one Velari soldier dropped his weapon, then another. On the Earth side, a general called off a strike. Slowly, weapons were lowered. Eyes turned to her. The queen who defied war, the soldier who stood by her side. They had broken the cycle. Seralia helped Rain stand. Their hands gripped tight. She looked at him and spoke quietly, only for him. "You didn't just change me," she said. "You freed me." He smiled back, even through the pain. "I didn't do it alone. You met me halfway." Together they stood at the top of the ridge as the sky cleared. The sun broke through the clouds. Behind them, soldiers from both worlds began to talk instead of fight. A new kind of mission had begun. One not written in orders, but in choice. The silver band she once offered now rested on Rain's wrist. A symbol of unity. Not ownership. Not rule. Just a bond between two hearts that had once belonged to different stars.